Good morning, everyone, and let me welcome you to the Human Rights and Humanitarian Forum that Aurora has organized, together with our great partners, the Promise Institute for Human Rights and UCLA Law. So first of all, I want to thank the Promise Institute, in particular, our good friend and co-founder of the Institute, Dr. Esrailian. And that's a personal thanks, more so than a professional thanks, because they have put in an enormous amount of effort to help firmly ground this year's Aurora Initiative ceremony and conference in Los Angeles. So thanks so much for the whole team for all the work you've done. Aurora has, as many of you know, been doing these events on an annual basis for the last 9 years, and this is the first time we're in the US, and it seemed like a daunting task, but this partnership that really felt quite natural for us, given our shared values, our shared intent, and the moment in time in the world where we need to all raise our voice, couldn't have come in a better time. So again, we're really excited to kick off this event, and you'll be the judge at the end of the day tomorrow to see how that goes. It's a great venue that we're meeting in. You're going to hear a lot of great voices during the programming we have today. You're going to hear from grassroots humanitarians, former state leaders, but you're also going to hear from some of the NGOs that do the work and help empower some of the change agents. You're also going to hear from the leadership of some of the largest companies who also are bringing their sentiments and their points of view on what it is to be good corporate citizens and deal with the challenges we have in the world. Of course, these kinds of events are largely to foster discussion, not a one-way street, and by mixing together the philanthropic community, human rights advocates, academics, media, and entrepreneurs, we absolutely are sure there's going to be a fertile ground for not only discussing and identifying challenges, but more importantly, solutions. So again, this is a very unique mix of people. It's a small gathering, although there's many of you here, and we're hoping that each of us can bring thousands of other people's opinions and learnings to the table. Think of yourself as a delegate to this event so that we can really share and enrich ourselves. Aurora was born out of the memory and the history of the Armenian genocide, and in less than 10 years, we have slowly become a fledgling, however aspiring, global organization. I want to thank everyone who's been on this journey with us, and also invite those of you over the last 9 years who've kind of been thinking, where are we going, to join us in this particular event to think about where we're going to go over the next 10 years and over the many decades thereafter. When we started this project at the centennial of the Armenian genocide, we thought we were paying tribute to the 8 years during which these atrocities were committed, from 1915 to 1923. And as many of you know, we intended to sunset this initiative. Despite the name Aurora, which stands for sunrise, we had a finite time in mind. But in fact, the world hasn't allowed us to do that. We didn't anticipate in 2015 that soon thereafter there would be wave after wave of refugees pouring into Europe, avoiding the atrocities and the conditions they were living in. We did not anticipate the major dislocation that the pandemic caused, loss of life, a clear sense of the inequities in the world in terms of access to healthcare and safety. We did not anticipate wars in Ukraine. We did not anticipate what happened in Gaza and in Israel, terrible, terrible events. And we did not anticipate the infection of evil that's ongoing in the world. And I don't say that minimally, as well as an infectious disease expert of sorts. The only way we're going to combat this is by humans standing up and acting as a vaccine. And that's through ideas, that's through risk-taking, that's through coordination. And the more the pressure comes to destabilize the situation we're living in, the more we have to get better organized. And Aurora finds itself as one of many voices, communities, and it's always good to remember unity is an integral part of the word community, that we have to basically do this work with even a greater purpose looking into the future than we did in the beginning, where we were looking at the past to learn from it. So we're gonna do all this together, and I want to just kind of say that again, our hearts are filled with a tremendous sense of gratitude for what this whole movement represents, and gratitude, as many of you will know, is an integral part of Aurora's being. We talk a lot about gratitude in action, and again, I'll refer to my professional life. It is a work day after all, but I'm here. I think in my daily life as a biotech entrepreneur of DNA, and the two strands that are inextricably linked and carry forward the information, for us, those two strands are represented by gratitude and action. We can't just be happy with expressing gratitude. We also can't rely on action that derives from other motivations, such as pity or kindness. We fundamentally believe that gratitude is this inexhaustible source, moving force for people to do good, and combined with the action of doing the right set of things, we think we can go places. So I hope that you will find elements of these things in the panels you're going to see. My job was to get you in the mood and in the mindset, so let's work on coming up with some new solutions. Let's work together in gratitude together. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Deputy Mayor of International Affairs, City of Los Angeles, Erin Bromaghim.
Good morning, and welcome to UCLA. It's absolutely my honor to be here with all of you today, and on behalf of Mayor Bass, welcome to Los Angeles. I want to take a moment to thank UCLA and to thank the Promise Institute for Human Rights and to recognize the importance of the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative here in our city. I want to thank especially Drs. Esrailian and Afeyan. Thank you for making today possible. I have the honor of serving as the second ever Deputy Mayor of International Affairs in the City of Los Angeles. And I actually had the true pleasure of working for the first ever Deputy Mayor for the past 5 years prior. I oversee 3 portfolios for Mayor Bass: international relations, including our work with the 93 foreign missions that comprise the diplomatic corps here in Los Angeles; international trade and investment, promoting Los Angeles as a destination for global business and the jobs that they create; and international events, including our preparations to welcome the world for the 2026 FIFA World Cup and the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games. I think this audience knows just how cool a job I have. But believe it or not, Los Angeles is the only city in the United States with a full deputy mayor tasked with international affairs. So here in LA, a global city, my role may seem obvious. But trust me when I say I'm a bit lonely. I want more counterparts in our cities around this country, and I want more cities engaged internationally. And that's because the bridges that we build to one another that connect us to what works in cities, they create momentum to do more good work, and they lift up the people that are doing that good work. And I believe this because I believe cities are where policies become real. Cities decide where and what and how equitably we build the infrastructure that defines our lives. And cities have the power and the responsibility to make human rights real. The 3 exceptional individuals that have been shortlisted for this amazing prize have risked their own lives to do the work that they do. They stand up for the rights of others. So I'm humbled to be with you in your presence and in awe of the great work that you do, that you have done and will continue to do. Thank you for reminding us of the work that we all must do, both in cities and everywhere. I'm proud that you're here in LA, and I'm proud that the Aurora Prize has chosen Los Angeles to host this year's distinguished event, because we are a city where everyone is welcome. We literally have billboards around saying just that LA is for all. And we are a city that's been among the first to take action on human rights issues, from recognizing the Armenian genocide to advocating for the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. But we are also a city where 46,000 people sleep on the street at night, where too many people do not have their basic needs met. And that's a key part of the administration that I work for and I'm proud to serve in, trying to bring together the solutions to end that reality. So while human rights themselves may be inherent, realizing them and protecting them, that's inherently a task for all of us. The Aurora Prize is about celebrating those who have seized that task and through their actions given us hope. So as you spend today together, may we all carry that hope and carry it forward. So thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Dean of UCLA School of Law, Professor Michael Waterstone.
Good morning, everyone. I know we've got a lot of time zones going, but I thought I would start with good morning. And you will hear from a lot of great voices today. Mine is not one, but I did want to come and on behalf of UCLA School of Law, home of the Promise Institute for Human Rights, welcome you to this incredible event. We here at the law school and UCLA are so proud to be your partners in this event, which brings together the world's most eminent thought leaders and change makers. I've seen us do this time and time again, using our power as an institution to convene and becoming a change multiplier. And we're just so grateful for the opportunity to host this important conversation. Before I was demoted to being an administrator, my own research and advocacy and background was in disability human rights. And I feel so grateful that I was able to work in states around the world, playing some small part in bringing justice to those who are often not viewed as full citizens. And I am so proud now to be the dean of a law school that has one of its core values, the pursuit of justice, which makes us so honored to host this conversation, both analyzing and celebrating the integration of international law and human rights and humanitarian work. Throughout today's forum, our speakers are going to address many urgent issues by integrating human rights perspectives with humanitarian viewpoints. And this collaboration is critical. In doing this, we are pioneering a framework of action and dialogue that brings together the strength of both fields. This approach enhances our effectiveness and builds towards future collaborations in the global era. So these discussions are in many ways part of ongoing conversations, and we here at UCLA Law are committed to sustaining these conversations and fostering more collaborations in so many ways. So many individuals work so hard to make something like this happen. But I do want to signal out two that I've had a particular window into. One is my colleague, Hannah Gary, the executive director of our Promise Institute. Thank you, Hannah. I know how hard it's been to pull this together, and I've seen how you've leveraged everything you and your team have and worked so hard and with so much love and passion to bringing this together, so thank you. And next, I want to thank Dr. Eric Esrailian, who is such an important member of our community and someone who I feel fortunate to call a friend. Eric, it has been your steady and consistent and compassionate leadership that has brought this magnificent event to our community. So on behalf of all of UCLA and UCLA Law, thank you. Once again, thank you for coming, and I know we're going to have a magnificent day. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage co-chair of the 2024 Aurora Prize Events in Los Angeles, Dr. Eric Esrailian, and chairman of the Milken Institute, Michael Milken.
It's amazing to see all of you here today, and thank you to my dear friend, Michael Milken, for spending some time with us. He's only been running the most massive conference you've ever possibly could imagine, and he made sure that he would spend some time with us this morning, so really appreciate it.
How could I not? How could I not?
Well, we're truly honored, and it's such an amazing group of people. It's going to be an incredible couple of days here, and I also just want to thank everybody from the Aurora community, obviously the UCLA community, Promise Institute for Human Rights, and of course the Milken Institute and the team at the Milken Global Conference, and of course Michael. So we're going to actually have kind of a fun conversation. I could talk to him literally all day, but we don't have all day. So we have about 20 minutes, and I have some prepared questions, but I might go off script a little bit.
I might also.
Depending on what you say. Okay, now I'm worried, but not really. So, you just finished hosting the 27th Milken Global Conference. And for those of you who are not aware, it's a gathering of some of the most impressive and important people around the world doing work in every possible industry, and from business leaders to humanitarians like many of you here today, to entrepreneurs, to educators, tackling the world's biggest problems. There was more than 4,500 attendees and nearly 1,000 panelists. So the topics they covered ranged from finance, public health in regions of the world, medical research, philanthropy. But I'd like to ask you, Michael, after going through this and having a chance to hopefully breathe and decompress a little bit, what was your kind of major takeaway that you would take from this year's Global?
I've been putting conferences on for 52 years. So we had our research conferences, and then we have the global, but the Milken Institute puts on 250 of those a year around the world, whether it's Johannesburg or Sao Paulo or Mexico City, etc. I think my takeaways are to be determined. There's enormous amount of time, 200 people working, probably 100 man-years that go into it, and we set down what are the issues that we see in the world and try to create an environment of not lecturing people, but introducing them to ideas. And so I can't really judge for almost a year what the results will be. And I'd give you one example of something that didn't happen. And it was a number of years ago, and the Berlin Wall quote was coming down and the opening of Russia. And Soviet Union was falling apart or just separating. And I had written a letter to the U.S. ambassador, his name was Bob Strauss. What was going to be the future that was going to happen? And if you step back and try to figure out, at that time, quarter of a billion people before it separated or more, how was the world going to change? And I'd written this letter and spent a lot of time thinking about it. And the ruble was weak, and all housing stock in the communist society was owned by the government. And so we developed a plan showing that if you distributed the housing stock, whatever dacha, apartment, building you lived in, you now owned it. That overnight you would have created 150 million people believing in a free enterprise system. And you would distribute the wealth of the country to the people from the government, and everyone would have a stake. The U.S. leadership rejected this idea. Unfortunately, the remains of the Cold War, their focus was causing the Soviet Union to separate rather. And we sent in advisors, David Sachs and others, whose strategies were not going to work. And so today, 45 years later, you had a distribution of wealth to very few people, and the free enterprise system failed the people of Russia, and the world is different today. So I only cite this example of what could have been, that when you step back and see what is going on in the world, and try to project where it's going, not where it is, that you step in and develop these ideas. And the lowering of birth rate in Korea, Japan, all of the developed world, and the high birth rates and the increase in population due to medical advances. So when we put on a program 30 years ago, the probability of passing AIDS on to your children if in childbirth, if you were a mother, was between 95 and 98%. Today, it's 2%. And so the population of the parts of the world where the largest number of people with HIV and AIDS, sub-Saharan Africa, the children are being born without starting their life with HIV and AIDS. And number two, the advances in treatment that might be heading to just taking a pill every 3 or 4 months are so advanced that we're going to see a substantial increase in the populations of sub-Saharan Africa. So if you accept that as a given, and you need to create 1 billion new opportunities, what are you going to do about it? And so, to me, part of our effort, and so at the conference we brought the World Bank IFC Milken scholars from different countries, developing countries, whether Mongolia, Pakistan, Angola, and so on, so that they interacted. And so we believe that if we could create 1,000 financially sophisticated people, Eric, that you could change the world, and they would be in the economic development, their stock market. One of our scholars now helped create and is now head of the Angola stock market. The largest group has come from Nigeria and Kenya. And kind of how Nigeria goes will determine how the world goes in the next few decades, since they are projected within 100 years at the moment to have a larger population than China. And there's already 20 million more children in Nigeria, and for every child born in North America, there's 1.3 children born in Nigeria, and they only have the 10th highest birth rate. So you can see what the world needs. Are we going to have 1 billion 12 to 18-year-olds who have machine guns? Or are we going to empower entrepreneurs? Hernando de Soto, an economist whose ideas were flourishing in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, pointed out many of the, quote, terrorists in the world were just frustrated entrepreneurs that didn't have access to capital. So if you can see where the world is going, part of this conference is to try to get the world to see where it's going and figure out, are we going to create the platforms that will change the course of history? In the case of the Soviet Union and Russia, the carryover from the Cold War overwhelmed what might have been a rational solution and taking the wealth of the country and distributing it to the people.
Amazing. You know, it's the easiest job in the world because Michael answers all of my questions basically with one question. So now I'm going off script a little bit, but I'm glad you mentioned the scholars, because for those of you who are unaware, you know, Michael, you started your career with incredible success in the finance world, and you've literally touched every industry, and also with your philanthropy, everything from public health to education. So other than your amazing family, of what have of all of these initiatives are you most proud, if you had to pick one? I know it's not easy.
So we moved with our families, about 1,200 people from the Northeast to Los Angeles beginning in 1978. And I moved here because my father was dying of cancer, and I wanted our two oldest children at the time to know him before he died. He died about 9 months after we returned. At one point, 80% of all the philanthropy in the city came from our employees at its peak. And so those employees have gone on. Today, they manage 70 or founded 70 of the largest financial firms or companies in the world. They manage trillions of dollars. They range from the CEO of Apollo or Ares to the CEO of Goldman Sachs. And I think what I'm most proud of is all of them have remained active philanthropists, active setters of what's important in a society. They have a lot more resources today than they did then. And often when I hired a person, I try to figure out if their wealth increased 100-fold, 1,000-fold, would they still be the same person? And so we had a mission, the democratization of capital, but many of us, 50 years ago started focusing on medical, et cetera. And I remember I was in an exhibit we had a fundraiser for the LA Zoo. And I was there, and there was maybe 1,000 people. And when the evening was over, they were auctioning off baby animals. Now, what do we mean by auctioning off baby animals, we adopted a chimpanzee named Pumpkin Milken now, so you got to give him a name. But almost every animal that was adopted, and they had a baby area of the zoo, was adopted by one of our employees. And so I think today what I'm most impressed by is the humanity of the people that worked together at that time. My brother's been very active at the law school here at UCLA, but others have chosen other paths. And we've been very focused in a similar path as the Aurora Prize, with trying to identify, and my brother Lowell's led the way, unsung heroes. And we've been building the center in Washington physically. We're in our 11th year, but it will open eventually here across from the White House and the Treasury. And we are going to try to show the world with bright lights, whether you come physically to this 6-building complex or digitally, those individuals that no one knew about, that changed the world by their actions. Probably more lives have been saved by the people that created vaccines than anyone else. And our recent Nobel Prize winner from the University of Pennsylvania had this belief. She came to this country as an immigrant from Hungary. And she believed in this RNA idea, technology, the mobilization, energizing your own immune system. And the University of Pennsylvania told her, after a while, if she didn't get out of this area, they were going to effectively, she wouldn't be able to teach, and they were going to take away her research and everything else, and she needed to move on to another area. Well, the entire world can thank her that she did not move on to another area from that standpoint. And so I think we want to make sure that we're hoping to have 100 million people come and visit digitally, that they understand people they never heard of, change the course of history in the world. In many ways, they put themselves in harm's way. What they did, the risks they took, but we've benefited. And yes, people maybe heard of Jonas Salk from the polio vaccines and things, but we have been very focused on telling you about your next door neighbor and the unbelievable things your next door neighbor did. So a gentleman that was supposed to join us last night, Gary Michelson, that you know well, has driven. It has been his will and yours that we have this center here in Los Angeles that might change the course of history in the area of medical research and immunology, etc. But what's not known is the Michelsons, Alia, flew to Ukraine, picked up 2 families in the Ukraine early in this war, where a bomb had wiped out the family's business, restaurants, killed the father, and brought the mother, her son, her daughter-in-law, and their child, and they lived in their home here for a year or so. 2 families, just one act of kindness. And today that family from Ukraine has a few restaurants in town and is rebuilding their life here. But, you know, no fanfare, no one knew what she did and what they've done. And their children have benefited as much as the family from the Ukraine from meeting these individuals and the child from the Ukraine that lived in their home. And they will never forget, and they're young, and they will carry that to the 22nd century. So my view on the Aurora Prize is that the world understands that there are people that stand up at the greatest risk often of when it's important to stand up, and letting us know that this will carry forth in the future, and you are not alone. There are many around the world that have stood up, we're hoping to shine a light on them and shine on the light on the winner of the Aurora Prizes.
Thank you, Michael. And my brain's going in 800 different directions, but I'm going to try to focus myself now because, you know, I think you touched on biosciences and the work that you've been doing in supporting so many young scientists. And of course, our co-chair, Noubar Afeyan's whole life has been about giving opportunities to people and creating innovation in this space. But one thing you talked about, which I really want you to have an opportunity to just also mention to the audience who's not aware of, is the Milken Center for Advancing the American Dream in Washington, D.C. And you briefly mentioned you know, kind of the facility and the unsung heroes who will be recognized. But can you just summarize what this really unbelievable project is? I know it's taken you many years, but you are rounding third base from what I understand, and I'm hoping to see it in a couple of weeks. Can you just tell the audience a little bit about this amazing project?
Does everyone in the audience know what rounding third base means?
I hope so. I know Michael Waterstone does because he's an Angels fan.
I would say beginning 12 or 14 years ago, I became quite concerned about the direction of the United States. And that concern has only increased over the last 12 to 14 years. And yes, we have 2,000 young scientists we have funded. We have thousands of young entrepreneurs. We have 1,000 scholars around the world. But my feeling is, and I don't believe the United States knows, and the people in the United States know truly how important the United States is to the world. And for most of the world, most of the people in the world in sub-Saharan Africa, parts of the Middle East, South Asia, Southeast Asia, their belief in the ideal of the American dream, the Kenyan dream, the Mongolian dream, it is the same dream. A dream for a better life for their children, a healthy life for their children, and access to health care. Freedom, number one description, and when you ask people what is the dream, is freedom to live your life. Wolfgang Puck's wife, Galia, has a jacket she wears. On the back of it is embroidered, she didn't know, she's from Ethiopia, she didn't know how heavy the load was until she tasted freedom. And so the world believes in the United States as a meritocracy. They believe, whether they ever come here or not, that someplace in the world there's an ideal that you can rise up not on who your parents were or where you went to school, what your religion, whether you're a man or a woman, what your beliefs are, but you can rise up based on your ability. And the country with the largest population in the world, India, that someday might be twice as large as any other country in the world. The caste system, the only way to rise up was education. The only way. And so they look at the U.S. as a belief. They might never make it here, they might never live here, but someplace in the world, there's an ideal that this belief exists. And so we started buying these buildings in 2024 across from the White House and the Treasury, because we felt as long as the United States existed, there might be a White House, there might be a Treasury. And there's a street there that was the People's Street. It's between 15th and 17th on Pennsylvania Avenue. And the people could walk into these buildings. Now, with security and the way the world is, you cannot walk into any building on this street. And so when we open all of our doors sometime in the first half of next year, the people will be able to walk in. And we have spent 3 years building this digital tree. That's 3 stories high with 1,300 leaves. You will see your stories. You'll see the stories of others. And you'll hear their journey. And you will see people like you, those that want to become a teacher, those that want to become a nurse. And you hopefully can find your stories. And so we're data tagging all these. But my feeling was we needed a torch. Not a torch that's lit every 4 years for the Olympic Games, but a torch that's lit every day, shining the light on millions of people that most people have never heard of, that rose up and changed the world, and that America will still stand as a place that believes in the ideal that no matter where you come from, where you are, what disadvantages, you lived in a homeless shelter, whatever challenges you have, that you can rise up. And hopefully we will make that come true. We have built maybe the world's most expensive buildings we've rebuilt, but a building is not a home. And so our focus is really to create a home for everyone in the world, either digitally or physically, that they can go to. And it'll take 1,000 years to amortize the cost of this project. But when the Getty was built here in Los Angeles, they were building it for 1,000 years. And so, to me, the Aurora Prize and the reason we've teamed up, Eric, is symbolic of that just an ordinary person in a village somewhere in the world can change the course of history. And so many people are alive today because someone at some point in history sheltered your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents. And you don't have to be Superman or Wonder Woman. You can just, everyone can contribute to this effort. So thank you for what you do.
No, thank you, Michael, and thank you for, yes, of course. And I just want to say again, thank you for making the world a better place. Thank you for changing the course of so many lives around the world, including my own. Thank you, everybody. Let's give hands.